Parents said they needed my college savings for life-saving surgery. Turned out, they bought my sister a new car. I left home, built my own life, and now they're begging to move in with me. When I was 18, I truly believed that family was everything. No matter what happened, we stuck together. We had each other's backs. Family first, always. I was just a simple kid from a small town, dreaming big. Getting into a good university felt like climbing Everest, but I was determined. For 3 years, I saved every dollar I could, working night shifts at a gas station, hauling bricks at construction sites on weekends, selling old junk online. Every single dollar felt like a step closer to my dream. I still remember the night I got my acceptance letter. My mom hugged me so tightly I could barely breathe. My dad clapped me on the back and told me he was proud. And I believed them. I believed in us. We were going to make it work, no matter how hard it got. I had saved up $15,000. Every penny I earned and scrimped for. Sure, it wasn't enough to cover everything, but it was a hell of a head start. With a small scholarship and a part-time job, I knew I'd be okay. Then one evening, everything changed. Mom broke down crying at the dinner table. She told me Dad was sick, something with his heart. He needed life-saving surgery immediately, and the insurance wouldn't cover all of it. They looked so broken sitting there, wiping their tears, their voices shaking. And I did what any decent son would do. I told them to take the money. I handed it over without a second thought, without hesitation. It was my dad's life. It was my family. That night, sitting alone in my room, staring at the empty envelope where my dreams used to be, I told myself I did the right thing. Dreams could wait, family couldn't. I thought I had sacrificed for something bigger than myself. I didn't know they had just sold me out for the price of a shiny new car. My name's Alex. At the time, I was 18 years old, just a kid trying to build something better for himself. I wasn't born into money or prestige. My family was solidly middle class. Dad worked at a car repair shop. Mom was a secretary at a local law firm. We weren't poor, but we weren't rich either. We counted coupons. We bought groceries in bulk. We reused everything we could. Growing up, I learned early that if I wanted something, I had to work for it. No birthday car, no fancy trips, no big allowances. Just, you want it, you earn it. And I respected that. I thought it built character. What I didn't realize back then was that rule applied only to me. My sister Emma, 2 years younger than me, never seemed to live by those same standards. She got a car for her 16th birthday. Brand new clothes every season. The latest phone whenever she hinted she wanted one. I used to tell myself it didn't matter. I was the responsible one, the hard worker, the good kid. Emma was just the baby, the one they wanted to spoil a little before she grew up. I didn't envy her, not really. At least, not until I realized how deep their favoritism ran. Back then, I honestly believed that if I kept my head down and worked hard enough, they'd eventually see me the same way they saw her, as someone worth investing in. I kept telling myself that when I worked double shifts, when I skipped out on parties, vacations, and even simple Friday nights just to save another $20. Every sacrifice, every long night, every moment of exhaustion, it was all for a future I thought we were building together. I thought I was carrying my weight. I thought they were proud. I thought wrong. The months leading up to the betrayal were some of the happiest I can remember, or at least that's how they looked on the surface. My acceptance letter hung on the fridge like a trophy. My parents would beam whenever someone came over and asked about my plans. Alex is going to university, my mom would say, pride swelling in her voice. First one in the family, Dad would add, clapping me on the back. I felt like I was finally being seen, not just as the dependable kid who kept his head down, but as someone who made them proud. We spent weekends touring campuses, talking about dorm rooms, majors, part-time job opportunities. Mom even helped me draft a budget spreadsheet, how much I'd need each semester, how to stretch every dollar. Dad joked about teaching me how to change my own oil before I moved out, just in case. Those moments felt real. They felt like home. They felt like the beginning of something bigger, like proof that all the hard years were finally paying off. There was never any mention of money problems, no worried glances, no subtle hints that things were tight. If anything, things seemed better than ever. Dad had picked up extra side work fixing up used cars. Mom had started freelancing on weekends. Emma was talking about her senior trip to Cancun, and no one batted an eye at the cost. It never even crossed my mind that something could go wrong. It's funny how easily you can miss the cracks when you're too busy dreaming. Because while I was planning my future, they were planning something else. Something that would shatter every good thing I thought we had. It started small, little things I barely noticed at first. Mom seemed a little more tired at dinner. Dad stopped joking as much. There were a few more "we'll see" answers when Emma asked for things, although somehow she always got them anyway. At first, I thought it was just stress. The end of the school year, bills piling up maybe. One night, I overheard them whispering in the kitchen. Words like doctor and treatment floated through the thin walls of our house. My chest tightened, but I shoved the worry down. If something was wrong, they'd tell me. Right? A few days later, Mom called a family meeting. We never had family meetings. We sat around the dining table, the same one where we'd celebrated birthdays, holidays, graduations. But this time, there was no celebration, only silence, thick, suffocating. Mom's eyes were red and swollen. Dad kept fiddling with the frayed edge of the tablecloth. Finally, Mom spoke. She said Dad had been having chest pains, said the doctors found something, said it was serious, said they needed surgery, said insurance wouldn't cover everything, said they didn't know what else to do. I felt like the ground had cracked open beneath me. Everything else faded away. The fridge humming in the background, the clock ticking on the wall, the distant sound of a neighbor's dog barking. All I could hear was Mom's voice, breaking as she said the words, life-saving and immediate. I didn't think. I didn't ask questions. I didn't hesitate. I just nodded and said, take whatever you need. Because that's what you do for family. You give them everything you have and trust that they do the same for you. That night, as I handed over the envelope stuffed with my entire life savings, I didn't feel regret. I felt relief. Relief that I could help. Relief that I could make a difference. Relief that, just maybe, this was what all those years of sacrifice were really for. I thought I was stepping up. I didn't know I was being pushed off a cliff. It happened 3 days after I handed over my savings. I wasn't even supposed to be home that afternoon. I'd picked up an extra shift at the gas station, but a sudden power outage shut everything down and they sent us home early. I remember feeling weirdly happy driving back, thinking maybe I'd surprise Mom and Dad. Maybe we could have a nice dinner together before the surgery. The house was empty when I got there. At first I thought they were at the hospital, until I heard the sound of an engine outside. Not just any engine. The smooth, low purr of something brand new. I walked to the front window and pulled the curtain aside. And there she was, Emma, sitting behind the wheel of a brand new, gleaming silver SUV, laughing, waving to her friend in the passenger seat, posing for selfies, showing off. I stood there, frozen, as she backed out of the driveway with a squeal of tires and disappeared down the street. For a long time I couldn't move. I just stood there, staring at the empty driveway, feeling my stomach twist into a knot so tight it felt like I couldn't breathe. I told myself there had to be an explanation. Maybe she won it. Maybe it was a rental. Maybe anything but the truth. But deep down, I already knew. I found the receipt later that night, shoved under a pile of mail on the kitchen counter. $18,500, paid in full, just 3 days ago. The same day I gave them everything I had. The car dealership logo was printed in big, bold letters across the top, like it was mocking me. It wasn't even subtle. No life-saving surgery, no medical emergency, just a shiny new toy for the golden child. And me, I was nothing. Nothing but a walking wallet they emptied the moment they saw a better opportunity. The betrayal wasn't just about the money, it was about everything that money represented. Every hour I'd worked, every sacrifice I'd made, every night I'd lain awake worrying about my future. Gone. Sold off without a second thought. I sat on my bed that night, staring at the receipt, feeling something inside me break. Something that would never, ever fully heal. I wasn't angry yet. Not fully. First, I was just hollow. An empty shell where trust used to live. I didn't confront them, not at first. I thought about it. A dozen different versions of the conversation ran through my mind. Me slamming the receipt on the table, Mom crying, Dad stammering excuses, Emma rolling her eyes, pretending like it wasn't a big deal. I pictured every word, every accusation, every tear. But when I looked at them, really looked at them, I realized it wouldn't matter. They wouldn't see it. They wouldn't feel it. Not the way I did. They would justify it somehow. Emma needed a safe car for college. We didn't think you'd mind helping your sister. You'll bounce back. You always do. I would be the bad guy, the ungrateful son. And deep down, I knew I didn't have the strength to hear those words come out of their mouths. I didn't want to see them reach for excuses instead of reaching for me. So I packed my things in silence. A single duffel bag, a few changes of clothes, my laptop, old and scratched but still clinging to life. A battered journal where I kept all my dreams written down, back when I still believed they mattered. I left a note on the kitchen table. Not angry, not dramatic, just 3 sentences. I know what you did. I'm done. Please don't contact me. And then I walked out the front door and didn't look back. I didn't have a plan. I didn't have a place to stay. I didn't even have a real backup savings. All I had was $23 in my pocket and a heart that felt like it had been ripped out and stomped on. But somehow, even through the fear and the heartbreak, I felt lighter. For For the first time in my life, I wasn't carrying their expectations, their lies, their betrayals. I was just me, broken, broke, but finally free. The first night on my own was the longest night of my life. I crashed on the floor of a 24-hour laundromat, pretending to wait for clothes that didn't exist. The buzzing of the fluorescent lights, the clanging of dryers, the stale, soapy air. It was the soundtrack of my free fall. I was terrified, hungry, alone. But I was also stubborn. I refused to go back. I refused to give them the satisfaction of seeing me crawl home, broken and begging. For the first week, I slept wherever I could, public libraries during the day, the back booth of a 24/7 diner at night if I nursed a coffee long enough. Sometimes I crashed in the university common rooms, blending in with other students cramming for exams. My $23 stretched thinner than I thought possible. One cheap meal a day, maybe two if I skipped breakfast and dinner. I pawned my old laptop for a few $100. It broke my heart to let it go, but survival demanded sacrifices. I took every odd job I could find: dishwasher, janitor, stocking shelves overnight. I applied for emergency financial aid at the local community college. It wasn't much, but it got me a part-time student status and access to resources: food pantries, used book drives, even a tiny grant. It wasn't the dream. It wasn't the prestigious university I had worked so hard for. But it was a start. Every day felt like a war, fighting exhaustion, fighting doubt, fighting the voice in my head that whispered, "They were right. You'll never make it without them." But every morning when I opened my eyes on a grimy couch or a cold bench, I remembered why I left. Because a life built on betrayal isn't life at all. And I would rather build something from nothing, something honest, something mine, than live in the mansion of lies they had built. I wasn't just surviving, I was rebuilding. Piece by fragile, stubborn piece. The climb back wasn't cinematic. There was no big montage moment, no sudden stroke of luck that turned everything around overnight. It was slow, brutally slow. It started with a part-time job at a grocery store, stocking shelves from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. My hands were cracked and bleeding from cold storage by the end of every shift. During the day, I took classes at the community college. Cheaper, closer, and way less glamorous than the university I had dreamed of. But I didn't care anymore about fancy names or big campuses. All I cared about was building something that no one could take from me. Piece by piece, I started reclaiming my future. I saved every cent I could. I skipped meals to buy used textbooks. I lived in the cheapest, most run-down apartment you could imagine. A one-room studio with peeling walls and a heater that only worked if you kicked it. But it was mine. Every creaky floorboard, every leaky faucet, every stubborn lock, mine. I kept my head down and hustled. Night shifts turned into promotions. I became an assistant manager at the grocery store. I picked up freelance gigs, writing essays, and doing odd jobs online. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't easy. But slowly, the scales began to tip. I was no longer drowning. I was swimming, barely sometimes, gasping for air, but still moving forward. 2 years later, I transferred to a university, this time on a full academic scholarship. Not because my parents pulled strings, not because someone paved the way for me, because I earned it. Through every sleepless night, every missed meal, every tear I refused to let fall. And when I walked across that graduation stage, no one cheered for me from the stands. No one held up signs or threw flowers. It was just me, and it was enough, more than enough, because by then I had already learned the most important lesson of my life. I didn't need them. I never did. It happened 5 years after I walked out of their lives. By then, I wasn't rich, but I was stable. I had a steady job in marketing, a decent apartment downtown, and a small but growing savings account. I was proud of the life I had built, one small, stubborn brick at a time. I hadn't spoken to my parents since the night I left. No calls, no texts, no birthday cards or holiday guilt trips, just silence. Until one afternoon my phone lit up with a number I didn't recognize. Something in my gut told me to let it go to voicemail. I didn't. Maybe part of me was still curious, still stupid enough to hope they had changed. The voice on the other end was shaky, tired. It was my mother. She told me things hadn't gone well after I left, that Dad's health had actually started to fail, for real this time, that Emma had moved across the country with her boyfriend and stopped helping them, that the bills had piled up, that they lost the house, that they had nowhere else to go. And then came the real reason for the call. "We were hoping we could stay with you for a while, honey, just until we get back on our feet." Honey? As if the word could erase everything they had done. As if it could plaster over the years of silence, the betrayal, the nights I had spent shivering in laundromats while they played house with my stolen future. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't scream. I simply asked, "Why me?" There was a long, painful silence on the line. Then Mom whispered, "Because you're the responsible one. You always were. The responsible one, the dependable one, the backup plan. Even after everything, they still didn't see me. Not really. They only saw what they needed. I thanked her for calling, and then I hung up. I didn't offer them a room. I didn't offer them a dime. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel guilty. I felt free. In the months after that phone call, I thought a lot about forgiveness. Not for them, for me. For the kid who had handed over everything he had, believing it would be enough. For the teenager who thought love meant sacrifice, no matter the cost. For the young man who sat alone in laundromats, starving, doubting, breaking, and still refusing to give up. I forgave him. Because he didn't know better. Because he was brave in ways no one ever gave him credit for. Because he chose himself, even when it hurt. I didn't call my parents back. I didn't check in to see if they were okay. Maybe that makes me cold. Maybe that makes me selfish. But the truth is, some bridges need to stay burned. Not out of anger, not out of revenge, but because not every person deserves a second chance to set you on fire. I moved forward. I built a life filled with people who valued me for who I was, not for what I could give them. Friends who became family, colleagues who became mentors. A future that was mine and mine alone. Sometimes, late at night, I still wonder what would have happened if I had stayed, if I had swallowed my pride, if I had accepted the lies, if I had continued carrying the weight of people who were never willing to carry me. But then I remember, I didn't lose them. They lost me. And that, more than anything, was their choice. Just like walking away was mine. I live a small, quiet life now. No flashy cars, no grand gestures, just peace. And to me, that's worth more than all the new cars, fake apologies, and second chances in the world.